Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Midday Live with me, AC02. Coming up in the next 1 hour. Foreign Ministry facilitating the return of 168 Ghanaians detained in Libya in the midst of auction and sale of some slaves in the war-torn country. Law lecturer questions the posturing of Deputy Attorney General in the Supreme Court decision to quash a halt order from African Human Rights Court in the Woyome trial. Also coming up in this bulletin, Ghana Revenue Authority to lock up Accra Mall for owing taxes to the tune of 2 million cedis. And on the foreign front, a Zimbabwean court finds activist Pastor Evans Mawariri not guilty of subversion. We have sports and entertainment all coming up shortly. Stay with us. And to our very first story, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has said that it is facilitating the return of some 168 Ghanaians who have been detained in Libya. A statement from the ministry said the 168 who were thought to be victims of a tortuous slave trade activity in Libya were rather illegal migrants arrested by the Libyan government. The statement said following disturbing reports of African nationals being sold off as slaves in Libya. The Ghana mission in Malta and concurrent accreditation from Libya paid a consular visit to the detention centers in Tripoli, namely Tajora, Trek Al-Sika and Trek Meta. The purpose was to ascertain the veracity of the claims, assesses their conditions and offer assistance to those detainees identified as Ghanaians, among others, other illegal migrants held at these centers. It emerged that 168 Ghanaian detainees were identified were not part of the slave trade as alleged, but had rather been arrested on illegal immigration charges and were already being held in detention, comes the statement said. And we're joined in studio by Kojo Wilmot. He is a national officer at International Organization for Migration, IOM, and also Mohammed Haruna, Executive Director, Detainees Diaspora Integrated Development Organization. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us here in the studio.
Thank you.
Well, so Mr. Wilmot, let me start with you. So, do we know the number of Ghanaians, in Libya now?
Yes, we have an idea. We know that currently there is an estimated number of 700,000 migrants currently in Libya, but
from different parts
of sub-Saharan Africa and then other places. But on the Ghanaian figures, we have a lot of them going through irregular means. Basically, they move from Ghana, they find their way through Burkina to Niger, Agadez, and then try to get to Agadez, and then use the Sahara to enter Libya. And because this activity is done in a clandestine way through irregular routes, it's difficult having the estimates. But let me give you one quick statistics that we know. Okay. In the year 2011, I'm sure you heard of the civil unrest in Libya.
Yeah, exactly.
And the IOM, together with the government of Ghana, of course, because it was a volatile situation, we worked with our partners, including the government of Ghana, and we returned close to 19,000 Ghanaians from Libya.
19,000?
Exactly. And as I did indicate, it would be difficult to have a definite figure on the number of Ghanaian migrants residing or in Libya now.
So we look at 19,000, quite a number of Ghanaians will be part of it. But Haruna, how dire is this situation?
This situation has been there for a very long time. It's just that this time around it's become very difficult to ignore, because it's become a problem of Europe, it's become a problem of Africa, and it's become a problem of source countries who send in them. So we need to really sit up and work at it. And we need to remember that slavery, as we knew it in the past, did not start as somebody coming to capture you and sell you. They were based in underground cultural undertones and traditional lives that pointed to the fact that it's a commodity that can be explored. And we're moving towards that extent, because we need to connect this news of slavery to the concept of trafficking that has been happening all the time. But we have not really seen it as we are seeing it today. So we need to sit up on that.
Well, you keep on saying that we need to sit up, we need to sit on this particular. What exactly can we do? Because this is really worrying situation. If you look at, even the visuals that are rolling.
It has to be a concerted effort from source and destination countries. Source countries, we need to look at our governance, public policy, and then social safety nets, which disappoint these people to get onto the board. And destination countries also have to come out very clear and state the procedures for coming to be part of their communities. So we, in the sending countries, cannot sit down and think it's Europe's problem. And Europe too cannot sit down and think it's Africa's problem. That's why they are coming. And Europe is adopting draconian methods of dealing with them, which has historically showed to be a failure. And Africans, it's like the elephant in the room. We don't want to talk about it. When Libya was stable, it was swallowing these people, and we didn't really see the effect of the failing policies in source countries that is sending the youth there. Now we can no longer turn our eyes. We need to look at every program that we're looking at to target the youth. We should be targeting it within the context of the current migration trends that is happening.
Well, Wilmot, I know that you work with government, in this particular issue. What is the collaboration with regards to this particular issue?
I'm happy you brought this up. Of course, as my brother here has clearly indicated, both the host and the countries of origin needs to come together to work in helping manage this situation. I'm happy to announce that, of course, IOM, through some interventions, have partnered with government to provide some interventions. Like now, we have worked with the Ghana Immigration Service. We have resourced the Ghana Immigration Service here in Accra for the accurate running of the Migration Information Bureau at JIS headquarters. We've also set up a Migration Information Center in Sunyani, which is also another major migrant center.
We're looking at this particular, situation where we have about 168, people there in Libya who need to come back home.
Yes, that's like we're saying now. We have partnered government since April through the support of the EU, European Union, and we have been assisting stranded Ghanaian migrants to return. And so we collaborated in organizing chartered flights for these Ghanaian nationals. We continue to visit some key detention centers. I'm happy to announce that as we speak, Ghana, we have around 266 nationals who, through our joint efforts by visiting these detention centers, I think 3 detention centers, they have registered and have passed that, yes, they are Ghanaians, and so we will be assisting them to return. And you see, when they return, we don't just leave them on their own, but we need to take them through some psychosocial counseling support, offer protection for these migrants to ensure that their rights are not abused. Once they are sound-minded, then we assist them to go to their final destinations. There are instances where through some interventions, we also provide some support to ensure that their return is not just within the short term, but it's a long-term sustainable return. Because we realize that if the return is not holistic, then the factors that pushed them out are still
well,
prevalent.
that's what
They will
Haruna
move. But
was trying
once
to make.
we provide these interventions to ensure that their return is sustainable. Let me be quick to point here to that through our joint collaboration with the Ghana Immigration Service, we're also implementing an alternative livelihood support where, because of the sensitizations we do, sensitize people, especially the youth, on the dangers of irregular migration. We've gathered some of the youth, 20 beneficiaries, to go into the cultivation of chili and then shallots, including watermelons. This is just towards showing people that Ghana is not a failed state. There are opportunities here which we can tap from. And then we encourage the youth to look at these opportunities that exist and not subject themselves to these dangerous and risky journeys across from Ghana.
Yeah, I know that there have been a lot of works, regarding that. Finally, before you leave the studio, I would like to find out from you. French President Macron has said that, these traffickers are Africans. I would like to find out from your different, organizations. What do you make of that statement?
That is true. Traffickers basically are Africans, or they have a transnational network. So it's not exclusively Africans, but from here, at the first point of contact of the migrant is the African network they contact. There is also a network in Europe too that also facilitates their entry. So in the context of what he's speaking about, and speaking with respect to Africa, African people are themselves who are trafficking their colleagues there, and they see an opportunity. Whenever there is a crisis, criminal networks always exploit that opportunity. And it's indeed true that, like I said, even the old slavery as we knew and how it has been a scar of the world's conscience over the past of time was perpetrated and started by Africans, though within a scale that was not in the way it was exploited by the Westerners. So just as that one, this one, that's what I was making earlier on, this one too is being done that way. Libyans are Africans. Those who are auctioning people out are Africans.
Wilmot, what do you also make of this particular issue? So it means that we're not going to get to the bottom of this if it is coming from our own people.
Of course, it's because they are vulnerable. You see, this category of migrants we are looking at are irregular migrants who have not entered Libya through the right means. Yeah. So then, they are vulnerable, they are exposed, and these traffickers and smugglers prey on these irregular migrants. But the way to go is through a concerted effort, both looking at the destination and then the countries of origin coming to work together. But we do not have control over the pull factors, things that are attracting our nationals. What we have control over are the push factors, things pushing our youth, especially through these perilous journeys. And so that is how we need to tackle it, to ensure that we sensitize our people, because many of them do make understand that if they had known this was how risky the journey is,
they wouldn't have embarked on it in the first place. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for helping us understand some of these issues and also the current issues of some 168, Ghanaian nationals in Libya. I am grateful to you. I have been speaking with Kojo Wilmot. He is a National Officer, International Organization for Migration, sitting close to me, and to the other side I had Mohammed Haruna. He is Executive Director, Returnees Diaspora and Integrated Development Organization. We are so grateful to you.
Thank you.
You're still live on Midday Live here on TV3. Let's move on to other stories. And the United States Ambassador Robert Porter Jackson has expressed confidence in policies and reforms introduced by government to fight corruption in the public sector. He called for aggressive action to be taken to deal effectively with the canker and ensure a corruption-free society. He spoke in an exclusive interview with TV3's Alfred Okanse.
Corruption. The President has said a lot of very critical things about corruption. I would like to see the Right to Information bill passed. I'm hopeful that in this Parliament, before it rises, we will see both of those bills. I think that will be proof that there's serious commitment. But I'm aware that investigations are ongoing. There's cooperation between our governments, and I feel optimistic that Ghana is moving in the right direction.
Now, many who have said that there's a lot of lip service that's paid to the fight against corruption, and you have been very, very consistent about the calls for government to show commitment in action and getting it right.
I would like to see the words translated into deeds, and I believe that we will do that. So let's give the government a little more time. They haven't even been in office a year yet. And it's important to pass things like the special prosecutor bill, but it's also important that they be done correctly, so that when we have the legislation, that it can be used to its fullest advantage.
There are many who say that it's not really going to make any difference, really. We still have institutions that have been mandated to fight corruption, that have been there for this while, but corruption still persists. What's really going to be different about the special prosecutor anyway?
You know, it really depends on who is appointed to be the special prosecutor and how much latitude that person has. I don't want to prejudge the outcome. I do believe the president, the vice president, others are sincere about their desire to change the conversation in Ghana. Ghana has very good laws, and enforcement has been the challenge. So let's give this government a little longer to show whether it's going to enforce the law or not.
Also, this year's National Farmers' Day celebration will be remodeled to reflect and showcase better contribution of farmers and fisher folks, as well as the developments in the agriculture sector. You know, government has said achieving sustainable food security in Ghana within the context of a phenomenal growth in population and increasing unemployment has been a challenge to the country's development. Government says it was poised to embark on the most comprehensive economic transformation agenda for industrial transformation to be anchored on 4 thematic areas, namely the macroeconomic stability and debt stability, infrastructural development, accelerated industrial development, and also agricultural transformation. The 33rd National Farmers' Day celebration will be celebrated on Friday, December 1, 2017, on the theme, Planting for Food and Jobs. There has been concerns over the lack of Farmers' Day interest in the Farmers' Day celebration from both the farmers and also the general public. To help us understand why this is happening, I have Edward Karewa. He is the General Secretary of the General Agricultural Workers Union here in the studio to help us understand why. Good afternoon, Mr. Karewa. Thanks for joining us here.
Yeah, good afternoon.
So why the lack of interest this time around?
Well, it's as a consequence of a certain lack of innovation, repetitive approach, and then a ritualistic way of doing things.
Okay.
The Farmers' Day celebration has been seen as an annual ritual. You know, what is new about it? Each year, what new things have been added to it? And, you know, so it's running into a fatigue, you know, and a boredom stage, where people already know what it is because it's repetitive. You don't see something more radical new about it.
Well, but this particular, it seems that there is some kind of low publicity on this particular, the 33rd, Farmers' Day.
Well, that would have to be accounted for by the government or the particular institution that is responsible for making it well publicized. And I don't know why they've decided not to publicize it. They've decided not to whip up interest in it, and so on.
Well, so as a union, of farmers, how would you, describe this situation?
Well, farmers will always do their part. They will always try to produce, and then when they reach their limit, and then their there are constraints, then they would seek support from the government. But we should not look at it from that angle. That is from the farmers' angle when they then demand. We should look at it as a national agenda to shape it the way we want it to be. And I think that that is what government intended to do, which they said they were going to use agriculture as the platform for the economic transformation of this country. Now, having conceived that idea, we were then expecting to see a more radical approach to dealing with or using agriculture as the platform for economic transformation.
Well, so this particular one, yeah, we know that, in all these, as Ghanaians, we also have a role to play to support government. As a union, what is the union also doing, to ensure that, we shape up people's interests?
Well, this is an event.
A national event.
A national event. We have some reservations about some of the things that are being done. We raised them in the past, and by the close of the day, we'll be coming out with a press statement, and we'll outline the things that we think that must be done. But if you look at the manner in which we celebrate the day, for instance, we make it a public holiday. And the question you ask yourself is, for who? You use the name of farmers to create a public holiday for the farmers that who will not even enjoy it. Which farmer in this country can be directed through legislation that don't go to farm this day because it is a public holiday? Who are you creating a public holiday for? Is it the workers who make sure that the Farmers' Day is organized? Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Fisheries? Those workers there will not even enjoy the public holiday. Who is benefiting from the public holiday? We need to radically transform the way we do things. We cannot continue with the status quo. It is 33 years now. Exactly. And every year we have a new theme for it.
This year's theme, my next point, planting for food and jobs. Well, yeah. What has been your assessment of that?
Yeah, farming for food and jobs is normal. Because it's not that, what are we going to do?
It's a government policy, so probably that's why we have made that the theme for this year's celebration.
Yeah, the theme, government has got a program called Planting for Food and Jobs. And this year's Farmers' Day theme is Farming for Food and Jobs, which is similar. Now, the question is, where are the jobs going to be created? How are we going to create them? Of course, when you talk about farming for food, of course, any person who goes into farming expects that you get output. Your output is good. That is the objective. As for the jobs part, it's not just about the fact that you've gone into farming, you've gone into agricultural production, jobs will necessarily be created. Certain ingredients need to be put in place to lead to the job creation.
Before we leave, what are the ingredients that you think needs to add up, for it to work well?
For instance, the Planting for Food and Jobs program, first, it's not seeking to bring in new or expand agricultural production by way of acreage and so on.
Okay.
It is seeking to improve the existing farming practices, and that can lead to improved productivity. That alone will not necessarily create the type of jobs that we want. Of course, some few jobs will be created along the line once you improve productivity, but up to 750,000 jobs will not be created because the program does not have that capacity.
Okay.
By its implementation to create those type of jobs.
Thank you very much for your thoughts on these issues. We are so grateful to you. I have been speaking with Edward Karewa, and he is a General Secretary, General Agricultural Workers Union here in Ghana. Thanks for joining us. We are grateful. Let's still move on to other issues. And law lecturer at Gimpa Law School, Justice Srem Sai, has said the posturing of the Deputy Attorney General Godfrey Dame is likely to degenerate the international relationship between Ghana and the international community. The Deputy Attorney General reacted after the Supreme Court rejected an order by the African Court of Human and People's Rights to halt proceedings in the case government is seeking to retrieve an amount of 51 million Ghana cedis judgment debt wrongfully paid to businessman Alfred Agbesi Weyome. He said government is unperturbed about the ruling of the African Court. Justice Sai spoke on News at 10 Tuesday night.
Ghana signed up to the protocol which established this court, committing the Republic of Ghana to be bound by the decisions of this court. Further, in 2011, Ghana made another deposition of an instrument which says that individuals like Mr. Weyome, you and I, could actually sue Ghana before the court, and the decision of the court will be binding. Now, my question is, if we did not, were we, excuse my language, joking when we were signing up with this? So I don't think the view of the Deputy Attorney General is the view of the authorities in Ghana. I believe his superiors, that is the Attorney General, is very experienced in some of these things. The President himself, and they are very fantastic lawyers and international law relations, persons at the Foreign Affairs Ministry. And I believe if proper consultation was done, we probably will be hearing some of these arguments that we heard today, that the Supreme Court is not bound and that the decision of the African Human Rights Court has no force in Ghana. It is, I think it's a very questionable view of the law. It actually, rejects the broader view of international law. It limits itself strictly to, it's a very limited view of what the position of the law is and should be revised as soon as possible.
And in the position of the law, Justice Sai, before you go, in the position of the law, does it look like a dead end for Mr. Weyome?
Well, like I said, this is a small issue. Actually, it's a small issue. I don't know why it's become so important. It's a small issue and cannot be a dead end to Mr. Weyome, because when I look at the generality of the law and how things are going, I have no doubt that at this point, Mr. Weyome would just have to probably sit and cross his leg and wait for the substantive decision on the matter pending before the African Court. I don't think the proper way to go, or the way to go for Ghana, is the way the Deputy Attorney General is prescribing. I think the lawful way to go is to hold on and for international respect, for international reputation. We have built a country over decades to become the beacon of hope for Africa as a country of rule of law rather than rule of men. And I think arguments like the one we heard today from the Deputy Attorney General would go a long way to derogate from this reputation that we've gained over the years.
Well, Ghana Teachers Day Out is a sports and fun games event for teachers and their families, and this is happening at the Elwak Sports Stadium on Friday, 1st December from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and we'll be speaking to some members, and we'll get to the story very soon. Let's take a quick breather here. We'll be right back. Well, so as I said early on, I have in the studio Grant Bomeo, and he is the director, lead consultant, and also I have Naomi Suzuau. She is also events administration, and also media executive, joining us to talk about Ghana Teachers Holiday. What is
Ghana Teachers Day Out.
Day Out. What is it about?
First of all, we Ghana Teachers Day Out is an event of Neogenics Education Group, and we are an educational consultancy. We've been around for about 4 years now, and we do educational events, educational consultancy, training in education, providing resources for teachers and schools, and also media interventions as well for the education landscape in Ghana.
4 years, and
4 years.
I don't know, I don't think we've heard much about you.
Yes, that's why we're here, so you get to hear more about us.
So what are you doing on Friday?
On Friday, we're bringing again one of our unique events, which is called the Teachers Day Out. And Teachers Day Out is an event that is bringing all teachers together. We have a fun-filled day for teachers, heads of schools, their families, and their children. Because teaching is a very strenuous profession. You work, you're under stress, and we felt that, okay, can we put out something so the teachers can come in and release the stress, and also an opportunity for teachers to meet and collaborate and network as well, get to know ourselves, because everybody's quite busy in their area, in their school, but we don't get opportunity to network, and collaboration is the new capital.
That sounds very much interesting. Suzwame, can you give us details about the program, the day, and then what you seek to achieve, with this, the program, the prizes at stake? You could tell us more about that.
Okay, so it's happening on the 1st of December. It's a holiday at the
Farmers
Elwak.
Day.
Yes, Farmers Day at the Elwak Sports Stadium. We're expecting families, teachers, their spouses. We're expecting everybody to be there. Admission is free. You don't need to pay anything. We just have branded event t-shirts available. Yeah, so you just buy a t-shirt, it's just 30 cedis, and then you come in, have fun. We have exhibitors on the day. Some are coming with products. We have food vendors. We have a kids arena as well. So we have bouncy castles there. We have other things for the kids to play with. And then we have highlights for the event. We're playing various games, very innovative, engaging, fun games. So we're expecting everybody to be there.
Is this the first time you're organizing such an event?
Yes, this is the first time we're organizing this event.
What are your expectations of the program?
Just like other events, we're into event organization. So we've been doing this for the past 3 years. We have the Global Super Teachers event, and then we have the Education Community Awards. This is our baby. Our events have been very refreshing. Our participants have always enjoyed it. So just like this, the other ones, this one is one that would leave memorable experiences in the minds of people.
Thanks so much for briefing us on this particular event. I sure will make time and come there to have fun myself. Thanks so much. And so I have been speaking with Grant Blewomo. Bomo.
I'm sure probably there may be some of your viewers who like to sign up, who want to come, and also just
we'll give all those information out. Yes, and also Naomi Suzwawu. Thanks for joining us to talk to us about this whole thing about Ghana Teachers Day Out. This is still midday. Let's move on to other stories. And the National TB Control Program is achieving impressive results in the fight against the disease. New tools for case finding are actively being used to screen people who come through OPDs for symptoms related to TB and testing them.
This is one of the tools for physically testing patients. Ghana is now promoting not only physical tools, but new systems to fight tuberculosis. The digital X-ray is a computer-aided diagnostic tool. It allows more people to be screened.
As a country, we are now promoting not just physical tools, but also new systems for case finding. Within health facilities, we are promoting what we call intensified case finding, where we are actively screening people who come through OPDs for symptoms related to tuberculosis and testing them. Then, physically, we are also using new equipment. We have a digital X-ray machine Now, this is a digital X-ray machine, allows us to be able to screen more people for chest-related signs of tuberculosis.
With this one, there's no film processing. There's no need for mixing of chemicals to process films in the olden days. But this one is a direct digital system. So as soon as you take the X-ray image, straight appears on the computer.
Then the Gene Expert machines. This is a molecular diagnostic tool. With government and donor support, about 90 of these have been placed in district hospitals. All regional and teaching hospitals are also equipped with the tools.
If you have somebody in Pumbuyoyo, he's seen an X-ray, he doesn't understand it, we have copy immediately here in Kolebu. And a radiologist can look at it and give him feedback what it means to enable him to work. Even without the presence of a radiologist, there's a software that can help him guess what the issue is, something to work with. And that is special, it's unique.
The Gene Expert can pick 99 out of 100 suspected cases. This improves work. The National TB Control Program says the new tools are already showing amazing results.
In terms of functionality and effectiveness and usefulness, the feedback we are getting from health staff is that it's amazing.
The National TB Control Program says the fight is getting more exciting as the program gets more sophisticated equipment to fight the disease. Samuel Kujawu, a lab technician at the Kolebu Chest Clinic, explains how this has improved case finding.
When we're doing smear, you could start treating somebody until about 4 or 5 months when you want to do the follow-up smears to see whether the person is purpling, and you get smear positive, then you want to do culture to see whether the person is not having resistant organisms. So out of the culture, you get to know that no, this is not a tuberculous organism, but it's rather a non-tuberculous mycobacteria. But with the new technique now, that risk is no more there.
The National TB Control Program is asking all to report early with the assurance that the new tools will aid quick and early diagnosis and help in the treatment of the disease.
Stay with us. We have more news coming up after this. The Ghana Revenue Authority is set to close down the Accra Mall following a 2 million tax the mall is owing the state. The authorities are at the mall to retrieve the money or close it down entirely if management fails to pay. In September and October this year, the GRA served the mall notice to pay the defaulting tax or have the facility closed down. The Ghana Revenue Authority is on a national tax campaign nationwide. The mall owes some 2.3 million cedis of tax. Well, hello, and currently I have my colleague Eben Ejekum, who is currently at the Accra Mall to update us on happenings there. Good afternoon, Eben. Thanks for joining us. Hello, Eben, if you can hear me. Have the GRA retrieved the 3.2 million from the mall? Well, so we're trying to make contacts with Eben, who is at the Accra Mall currently, to give us updates of happenings there. What we're told that the Ghana Revenue Authority is set to close down the Accra Mall following a 2 million tax the mall owes the state. Tax authorities are at the mall to retrieve the money or close it down entirely if management fails to pay. In September and October this year, the GRA served a notice to pay the defaulting tax or have the facility closed down. The Ghana Revenue Authority currently is on a national tax campaign nationwide, and the mall, we are told, owes some 2.3 million cedis. Currently, my colleague Ebenezer Ejekum is there, and we're trying to reach him to give us more. Well, we'll bring you that in a subsequent bulletin. Right now, though, we will do sports, and we have Kojo Afre. Good afternoon.
It's brought to you by
Thank you very much, AC Binewa. Good afternoon and welcome to the sports segment here on Midday Live. My name is Nana Kojo. So the Ghana Football Association Executive Committee and stakeholders met in Cape Coast for a 3-day summit in a bid to straighten things in Ghana football. My colleague Thierry Nyan is there. The 3-day summit has ended and GFA President Kwesi Nyantakyi is addressing the media and the Executive Committee and stakeholders that gathered for the 3-day summit. Let's listen to him.
And so forth and so on. These are experts who will be running the league, and we will count a lot on them and also set targets for them to meet in the discharge of their functions. We also realize that certain issues have become very topical and connected with the league, like match fixing allegations, media issues, and then coaching and refereeing issues. So prior to the start of the season, we'll be organizing seminars for the media. FIFA has already agreed to provide experts to the Football Association to organize a seminar on match fixing to create the awareness and educate people on the dangers inherent in match fixing. We'll also be doing a technical study meeting for all the coaches of the Premier and First Division leagues who took part in the season last year, for them to do an appraisal of performances of the players and the coaches themselves. On our judicial organs, we're also going to do a review, and that review will look at some amendments in our regulations and statutes. We're going to enhance sanctions for infringement on the rights of sponsors, rights and benefits of enjoyment of benefits by sponsors. You recall during the immediately preceding season, there were cases in which sponsors like StarTimes were prevented or obstructed from discharging their responsibilities. We're proposing very stiff sanctions for that. And the stiffest sanction that a club will suffer is usually the forfeiture of a match. And so if we prevent a sponsor from covering a match, you lose the match, you lose the points. We will not even waste our time ensuring that the match takes place. We are also going to propose to Congress to consider the introduction of a sole judge or a single judge in exceptional circumstances in order to contribute to an expeditious hearing of cases before our judicial bodies. And then we are also concerned about delays of cases at our judicial body. So we are going to review the processes for filing of cases. At the moment, you file a statement of case, a defense, and a reply. We are reviewing it to make room for only a case and a response, a defense. There will be no requirement of a reply. And then the days for filing cases has been 3 working days. We are reducing it to 2 days. And that will reduce the time for adjudication of cases before the GFA. The GFA is introducing new regulations of marketing. This is the first time the association will be having marketing regulations. And these marketing regulations are intended to attract sponsors and also retain existing sponsors. Provide stiff sanctions against people whose behaviors discourage sponsors from coming on board. And also certain conducts that are inimical to the interests of sponsors are all being spelled out. It's a 37-page document that copiously elaborates and spells out various duties of the clubs, their responsibilities, and sanctions attaching to certain misconduct. We also looked at the interests of players, and we're going to continue to engage with PFAG to support players through pension schemes and insurances that will undertake or underwrite costs relating to the treatment of injuries. And we also encourage PFAG to work closely with
So that was live from Cape Coast, where the Ghana Football Association President Kwesi Nyantakyi was addressing the media after a 3-day summit to streamline things in Ghana football. And he spoke about a number of issues. The fact that the Ghana Football Association will tackle the issue of match fixing and corruption, will also ensure that referees are paid on time, will also look at the player salaries, engage the PFAG and the clubs as well as to how to ensure that players in Ghana do have a certain level level of salary that will ensure that they continue to stay in the country. So join us on News 360 as we bring you more details from the 3-day summit and what has been going on in there. But let's move on to our next story, where at least 2 Black Stars players have spoken out on social media against the ongoing slave trade in Libya that has shocked the world. Videos of natives from mostly West African countries being traded has gone viral this week, and Black Stars midfielder Thomas Partey and defender Jonathan Mensah have joined a growing band of African players to speak out against the practice and urge action. Madrid-based Partey tweeted a video of the practice under the caption "must be stopped immediately" with the hashtag "how long must we suffer in our own continent." Jonathan Mensah, who plays his club football in the USA, tweeted the same video and said it was unbelievable that this is happening in 2016. He called the perpetrators of the cruel act and insists it must be stopped immediately. Mensah and Partey are the latest players from the
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Midday Live with me, AC02. Coming up in the next 1 hour. Foreign Ministry facilitating the return of 168 Ghanaians detained in Libya in the midst of auction and sale of some slaves in the war-torn country. Law lecturer questions the posturing of Deputy Attorney General in the Supreme Court decision to quash a halt order from African Human Rights Court in the Woyome trial. Also coming up in this bulletin, Ghana Revenue Authority to lock up Accra Mall for owing taxes to the tune of 2 million cedis. Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Midday Live with me, AC02. Coming up in the next 1 hour. Foreign Ministry facilitating the return of 168 Ghanaians detained in Libya in the midst of auction and sale of some slaves in the war-torn country. Law lecturer questions the posturing of Deputy Attorney General in the Supreme Court decision to quash a halt order from African Human Rights Court in the Woyome trial. Also coming up in this bulletin, Ghana Revenue Authority to lock up Accra Mall for owing taxes to the tune of 2 million cedis. And on the foreign front, a Zimbabwean court finds activist Pastor Evans Mawariri not guilty of subversion. Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Midday Live with me, AC02. Coming up in the next 1 hour. Foreign Ministry facilitating the return of 168 Ghanaians detained in Libya in the midst of auction and sale of some slaves in the war-torn country. Law lecturer questions the posturing of Deputy Attorney General in the Supreme Court decision to quash a halt order from African Human Rights Court in the Woyome trial. Also coming up in this bulletin, Ghana Revenue Authority to lock up Accra Mall for owing taxes to the tune of 2 million cedis. And on the foreign front, a Zimbabwean court finds activist Pastor Evans Mawariri not guilty of subversion. We have sports and entertainment all coming up shortly. Stay with us. And to our very first story, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has said that it is facilitating the return of some 168 Ghanaians who have been detained in Libya. A statement from the ministry said the 168 who were thought to be victims of a tortuous slave trade activity in Libya were rather illegal migrants arrested by the Libyan government. The statement said following disturbing reports of African nationals being sold off as slaves in Libya. The Ghana mission in Malta and concurrent accreditation from Libya paid a consular visit to the detention centers in Tripoli, namely Tajora, Trek Al-Sika and Trek Meta. The purpose was to ascertain the veracity of the claims, assesses their conditions and offer assistance to those detainees identified as Ghanaians, among others, other illegal migrants held at these centers. It emerged that 168 Ghanaian detainees were identified were not part of the slave trade as alleged, but had rather been arrested on illegal immigration charges and were already being held in detention camps, the statement said. And we are joined in studio by Kojo Wilmot. He is a national officer at International Organization for Migration, IOM, and also Mohammed Haruna, Executive Director, Detainees Diaspora Integrated Development Organization. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us here in the studio.
Thank you.
Well, so Mr. Wilmot, let me start with you. So, do we know the number of Ghanaians, in Libya now?
Yes, we have an idea. We know that currently there is an estimated number of 700,000 migrants currently.
Yes, are diminishing. At regular intervals, she must receive blood transfusion, or else we know the consequences of that as well. So it's very alarming. It's scary. We try to be brave, but for her sake, you don't want to have that fear in your eyes to unsettle her, because she needs to be all positive to aid in the healing process.
A pediatric doctor of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Dr. Yelita Okain, advised cases such as childhood cancers should be reported early to avoid it becoming terminal.
So that, like we always say, no child should have to die of cancer. So we pray that through this means they'll be able to raise funds so that she can get the necessary help that she needs and treatment that she needs.
Sympathizers should kindly send their donations to the Kolebu Teaching Hospital or to the TV3 newsroom.
Well, that's all we have for you, but before we go, no contribution is too small to save the life of little Asida from her current condition. That's all. Thanks for watching. My name is Esi Benewa Otu. Enjoy the rest of our programs. Have a good afternoon.